because I'm not just Peter Parker. I'm Spider-Man.
Alright, let's do this one last time. His name is Peter Parker. He was bitten by a radioactive spider, and after that, he gained incredible powers. As the famous song says,
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can.
And this is how Spider-Man was born, one of the most popular superheroes in history. I'm pretty sure you know the rest.
With great power comes great responsibility.
He saved the world hundreds of times, fell in love and broke up, existed in dozens of parallel universes, and danced to James Brown while possessed by a symbiote. But in any case, every screen version of him has its fans. There's a Parker for every taste, positive or emotional, traditionally animated or made with CGI, on Earth or in space, or in Japan? In this video, I'll talk about absolutely every appearance of Spider-Man on screen, from the 1967 animated series to the present day. Also cover the main comic book arcs that were adapted directly or indirectly. So, get comfortable, because we're going to be here for a while. Your friendly neighborhood 11 Slate. Let's start with the creation. Spider-Man was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and first appeared in comic books in 1962. The new superhero was given a chance to test his powers in the pages of Amazing Fantasy. Stan Lee, noticing the age group that was interested in comics, decided to make the main character a teenager. We'll not go too deep into all the complicated details of how the character was created, but there are a lot of different versions of who deserves the credit. The most important thing is that the success was phenomenal. And already in 1963, Spider-Man received his first solo series, Amazing Spider-Man, which in one form or another is still being published today. By the by, the first villain Peter fought was the Chameleon, also known as the Soviet criminal Dmitry Smerdyakov, a character who still has not faced Spidey on the big screen. At the same time, dozens of other Parker series were released, where in classic Marvel tradition, only the adjective and the title changed. So, Spider-Man has been spectacular, sensational, unlimited, ultimate, and so on. And since we already mentioned the multiverse at the beginning, there is one more fact worth knowing. Every parallel world has its own number, which helps identify it within the larger structure of reality. For example, the main comic book timeline is known as Earth 616. These numbers have also appeared in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they only made everything more confusing.
There are multiple realities, Peter. This is Earth, Dimension 616. I'm from Earth 833.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, one step at a time. Spider-Man's first appearance on screen came in 1967. That year, ABC premiered an animated series with the simple title, Spider-Man. The show lasted for 3 seasons, changed producers and creative teams along the way, and ended up looking very different from how it started. The most important thing to mention about the series happens at the beginning of every episode. Of course, it's the iconic theme song. Even people who have never seen the show have probably heard at least part of it. The melody and lyrics were incredibly catchy, and the song became an instant hit, which is not surprising. The lyrics were written by Paul Francis Webster, a 3-time Academy Award winner for Best Original Song, with 13 Oscar nominations overall. It's honestly fascinating that someone with so many awards came up with a rhyme like this.
Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood.
But Spider-Man 67 is remembered for more than just its theme song. Many internet memes that still circulate today came directly from this show. For example, Me and the Boys, and the one that needs no introduction.
That man is the imposter. There can't be 2 Spider-Men. Let's take them both in!
By the by, if you have ever wondered what is actually happening in that famous scene, here's the answer. Throughout the episode, Peter Parker is chasing a brilliant con artist and master actor named Charles Cameo, who impersonates different people to commit crimes. As you can see, eventually he decides to impersonate Spider-Man himself.
Your next performance will be in front of the judge. Thanks to Spider-Man.
The entire first season consists of short adventures featuring Spider-Man facing familiar villains such as Dr. Octopus, Green Goblin, Rhino, and others. At the same time, Peter Parker's personal life is barely explored beyond his job as a photographer at the Daily Bugle. Aunt May appears only once. Besides Peter, the main supporting character is his co-worker and love interest, Betty Brant. You may remember her from the live-action movies played by Elizabeth Banks in Sam Raimi's trilogy, and Angourie Rice in John Watts' films. Betty Brant was actually Peter's main love interest before Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane entered the picture. We'll get to them soon enough. And of course the show introduced Daily Bugle editor J. Jonah Jameson in what became his definitive form.
Don't tell me who I can or cannot fire, Miss Brant. Put him on the payroll and then fire him.
This is basically the version that J.K. Simmons later copied for Sam Raimi's movies.
Parker, hello, you're fired.
In many ways, Jameson is the true villain of the first season. He constantly gets in Spider-Man's way, indirectly creates several supervillains, and even puts on a Spider Slayer suit himself at one point.
Look, the amazing Spider-Man, trapped by the famous J. Jonah Jameson.
Interestingly, that storyline is one of a few taken directly from the comics. For some reason, the show ignores many of the things happening in the original source material. By season 2, the project came under the creative control of Ralph Bakshi, one of the most famous animators of the second half of the 20th century. You've probably seen some of his work before: Fritz the Cat, Fire and Ice, the first animated adaptation of The Lord of the Rings. Bakshi's unique style completely changed the show. Episodes were no longer split into two 10-minute stories. Instead, each episode became a single 20-minute adventure.
Because I didn't realize in time that with great power there must also always be great responsibility.
The first episode of Season 2 finally tells Spider-Man's origin story. After that, Peter starts fighting aliens, magical forces, and creatures from underground civilizations. Comic book villains mostly disappear, though Kingpin makes a brief appearance. By Season 3, the budget is falling apart. The production team starts reusing backgrounds and animation from earlier episodes. Eventually, they begin recycling entire episodes, and not just from Spider-Man. One episode in Season 3 reuses almost all of the animation from another Bakshi series, Rocket Robin Hood. Mary Jane even makes a small appearance, although she's now presented as the niece of Captain Ned Stacy. As you can probably tell, staying faithful to the comics is not exactly a priority anymore.
Yeah, the city's been quiet for the past few weeks.
The series ends with an episode that's basically a collection of flashbacks from previous adventures. Expecting a proper finale would have been asking a bit too much. The show became a cult classic, but the next Spider-Man project would not arrive for another 4 years. On the bright side, it would be Spider-Man's first live-action appearance. And yes, we are talking about
Spider-Man, where are you coming from, Spider-Man?
In the 1970s, American television aired a children's educational program called The Electric Company, something along the lines of Sesame Street. And it was there that Peter Parker made his live-action debut. One season introduced a new segment called Spidey Super Stories. These short 3-minute episodes followed Spider-Man as he faced a variety of villains.
Spider-Man!
The role of Spider-Man was played by puppeteer and dancer Danny Segrin. Interestingly, Spidey never removes his mask. Among his enemies were a teenager dressed as Napoleon who ran around hitting people on the head, the Wall Man, and even Count Dracula. You might be wondering why I'm talking about an obscure segment from a children's show nobody cares about today. First, because it inspired a comic book series that received an official designation in the Marvel Universe. And second, because the narrator and several supporting characters were played by none other than a young Morgan Freeman.
Isn't she a lovely lady?
It is a fascinating chance to look not only at Spider-Man's past, but also at the beginning of the career of a legendary actor who, even back then, was busy explaining all kinds of things.
Because every time I show up and explain something, I earn a freckle.
But let us move forward to 1977. In the late 1970s, bringing famous superhero stories to television became something of a tradition. The Incredible Hulk with Lou Ferrigno, Wonder Woman with Linda Carter, and The Amazing Spider-Man with Nicholas Hammond all made their way to the small screen. Musical fans may remember Hammond as Friedrich, one of the children from the Oscar-winning film The Sound of Music.
I'm Friedrich. I'm 14. I'm impossible.
The series began with a 90-minute pilot episode, released as a separate TV movie with the simple title Spider-Man. The next 2 episodes, Deadly Dust, were also released separately under the title Spider-Man Strikes Back. So, let us take a look at what made this series interesting. It begins with the classic scene of Peter being bitten by a radioactive spider, gaining his powers and becoming Spider-Man. Although everything happens very quickly, there's no death of Uncle Ben. Well, technically there is, but it has nothing to do with Peter's transformation. And he's not even Ben here. His name is Max.
You made these? Oh, no, I found it in the attic. Your Uncle Max bought it for a Halloween party. I just cleaned it up a bit.
Peter still works at the Daily Bugle, but the show also gives some attention to his college life. He works for J. Jonah Jameson, first played by David White and later replaced by Robert F. Simon.
All right, what are you standing around here for? Get this place cleaned up.
The replacement honestly works better, but we all know who really owns that role in our hearts.
Dr. Octopus. New villain in town. Doc Ock.
Genius.
No one can beat him. What continues to surprise is how little the series cares about the comics, where by that point, some real drama had already happened. The conflict with the Green Goblin and Harry Osborn had already played out, the same material that would later become the foundation for Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie. Gwen Stacy had already died, Mary Jane had been introduced, and Aunt May had almost married Dr. Octopus. Yeah, no joke. But the show does not care about any of that. Spider-Man fights blackmailing hypnotists, robber hypnotists, creators of hypnotic gas. Clearly the writers had a thing for mind control, stops political assassinations, and even sort of predicts Die Hard.
Welcome to the party, pal!
The first episode of Season 2 is surprisingly similar to the famous Bruce Willis movie, and it came out before both the movie and the book that inspired it. A skyscraper is taken over by terrorists, the roof is rigged with explosives, the criminals have selfish motives, and so on. Except here, Spider-Man is the one dealing with the problem. But I especially want to focus on one episode from the first season called Night of the Clones. Spider-Man comics have always loved cloning stories. There's even a character named Miles Warren, also known as the Jackal, a specialist in duplicating living beings. He managed to create several Peter Parkers, Gwen Stacy's, and other characters. In the mid-1990s, a clone of Spider-Man named Ben Reilly, also known as the Scarlet Spider, became the main character for a while.
My name is Ben Reilly. I'm his clone. Or maybe he's my clone. We're not sure.
A lot of Spider-Man lore is connected to this topic, but it still has not really made it to the big screen. More precisely, this live-action series remains the only time the clone idea was adapted with real actors. Animation is another story, and we'll get into that later. And honestly, I think that's for the best.
Mr. Jameson!
The Clone Saga is far from the strongest Spider-Man storyline, and even though it has an important place in the comics, on screen it would probably look pretty strange. When yet another mysterious masked stranger turns out to be Peter's clone, your hand just naturally reaches for your forehead. So, let us use this as the first entry on our counter of major comic book arcs that have not been adapted for the big screen. Other than that, as I said earlier, the series has very few real points of contact with the comics. Let's mention one more. Jameson's secretary here is Rita Conway, played by Chip Fields. This character is largely based on Gloria Grant, who held the same job in the comics starting in the mid-1970s. Robbie Robertson also appears in the pilot. You've seen him many times in later screen versions. The series ended with a 2-part adventure called The Chinese Web, which later became the third feature-length TV movie The Dragon's Challenge. Spider-Man travels to China to protect Jameson's old classmate from the schemes of a corrupt businessman. CBS canceled the series in 1979 over concerns that the network was becoming too strongly associated with comic book shows. The same sad fate hit Wonder Woman. In the 1980s, there were rumors about bringing Hammond's Spider-Man back in a crossover with the television Hulk, but the project never went beyond talk. The more popular Green Giant got the studio's attention instead and received several solo TV movies. Years later, Hammond was not invited to appear in Tom Holland's multiverse adventure. It's a shame that such an opportunity was missed, because it could have delighted the most attentive fans. For example, in one of the DC crossover events on the CW, they brought back Tom Welling, Ezra Miller, and even Burt Ward, who played Robin in the 1966 Batman series.
Holy crimson skies of death!
Not saying the result was amazing, but the attention to detail mattered. And if you thought the late 1970s Spider-Man series had little in common with the original comics, the next project is going to surprise you. Spider-Man and Marvel Comics in general became popular all over the world, except in Japan, where manga ruled. American picture books had way too much text. To get through a single page, you had to read a mountain of thoughts from different characters. Manga, on the other hand, had minimal text and maximum action. One American living in Japan, Gene Pelk, noticed this difference, contacted Marvel, and got their blessing to promote the brand to a wider audience. They decided to start with television, since TV shows were very popular, and that's how a completely unique product was born. Let's take a look at the opening. As you can see, it starts pretty well. Catchy music, the Spider-Man suit looks familiar. The wall crawling is even filmed a little more realistically than in Hammond's version.
Change the pardon!
Wait, what? Yes, Japan is Japan. Getting through this without giant robots was never going to happen.
Spider-Man!
So, what's the setup here? A young motorcycle racer named Takuya Yamashiro witnesses the crash of a spaceship from planet Spider. The main character enters the ship, which by the way is called Marveler, and receives a spider bracelet that transforms its wearer into Spider-Man. Now he has to fight the evil Iron Cross army, who have already conquered planet Spider and are now targeting the entire universe. The villains are led by Professor Monster and Amazoness. Beautifully accurate names, honestly. Professor Monster, by the way, looks a little like Dr. Doom, but the similarity pretty much ends with half a metal face and a hood. Takuya's father, who is a space archaeologist by profession, and seriously, where do you even study for that, dies, giving the conflict a personal angle. If you ever have seen any episode of Power Rangers, you already have a pretty good idea of the structure of each Spider-Man episode. In every episode, Takuya faces the schemes of the Iron Cross army. They send a monster after him, Spider-Man beats it, and then the monster grows to giant size. At that point, Spider-Man summons Marveler. Remember, that's the spaceship from planet Spider, which transforms into the robot Leopardon. Takuya also has a spider machine called GP7. Things like the robot and the vehicle are necessary for the main purpose of a children's TV show, selling toys. So, memorable gadgets get inserted everywhere, whether they make sense or not. By the way, according to the creator of the Leopardon toy, he also created the first Transformer, so it's quite possible that the famous franchise grew out of this very idea. The series lasted 41 episodes and one short film, which was shown in theaters. What makes it unique is that it actually tells a complete story. In the end, Takuya wins and watches the sunset. Sorry for jumping straight to the ending. Ideally, we could talk about the funniest moments in the series, but the problem is that applies to all the moments. Pick any two episodes in random and you'll find a ton of that signature Japanese madness. Let's take episodes 7 and 11 for example. Told you. Without taking almost anything from Marvel Comics, the Japanese created a distinctive product in their own cultural style. But Western audiences only discovered it in the mid-2000s. Before that, almost nobody had really heard of it. In Japan, though, it was a hit. By the way, do not confuse this live-action Spider-Man with the manga about the adventures of the web-slinging superhero. Those were different characters, released in different periods. Now, let's return to the main track, back to the West. But fair warning, this time we will step away from Spider-Man himself and talk about related characters.
It's Spider-Woman!
For example, in 1979, a 16-episode animated series called Spider-Woman was released, focusing on the adventures of Jessica Drew. Just like Peter, she was bitten by a spider, but she did not get any magical transformation from it. So her father, a scientist, had to use a healing spider extract, which gave her powers. Her origin was heavily changed compared to the comics. We'll not go too deep into it because that would take a lot of time, and we're still here to talk about Spidey. The main thing to understand is that her story is not limited to the usual got hit by a radioactive wall and became wall man type of origin. The creation of the character is actually much more interesting. The thing is, Marvel's competitors wanted to introduce a character named Spider-Woman in the animated series Tarzan and the Super 7. Marvel could not allow that, so they decided to launch a series about a character with the same name to protect the copyright. For her origin story, they quickly used early ideas from another character, Wolverine, who had not yet appeared in comics, and Spider-Woman became another Marvel character. Tarzan's version had to rename its character Web Woman. But let's talk briefly about the animated series itself. Jessica Drew works at a publication called Justice Magazine and travels around the world with her nephew Billy and her colleague Jeff, fighting villains along the way. Their adventures take them to Norway, Africa, Moscow during the Olympics, and even the Amazon where Amazons live, which is probably logical in a way.
By closing your eyes. Now!
That light, I can't see.
Run, Billy! Find Jessica!
Once again, there is almost no real connection to the comics. The writers clearly had their own idea of what audiences wanted. Still, Spider-Man himself shows up twice. First to join the fight against an alien mummy.
Well, there they are.
Sure hope this plan of yours works.
So do I.
And then against a giant spider. Among the more recognizable villains, Kingpin appears and tries to reveal Jessica's identity to the whole world. But Spider-Woman outsmarts him using a full-sized, anatomically accurate robot. Where did she even get that?
But I saw you. You're Spider-Woman. Oh.
Dormammu, Doctor Strange's nemesis, also appears in one episode. But the animated shows are still very far from the original comics, and they are not even really trying to use them properly. So, when does that finally change?
Up on the building! It's Spider-Woman!
In 1981, Marvel Productions suddenly released not one but two animated series, airing almost side by side. The first one was simply called Spider-Man, because sometimes there's really no need to pile on unnecessary subtitles. As the very clear title suggests, it focused on the adventures of Peter Parker. This time, the producers finally moved away from the habits of earlier adaptations and started looking much deeper into the source material. The 1981 series is unique because it often brings a huge number of Marvel characters to the screen, including plenty of them who are definitely not A-list. Kazar from the Savage Land, basically Marvel's own Tarzan, drops by. Felicia Hardy, also known as Black Cat, appears on screen for the first time. Her relationship with Spider-Man feels very similar to the chemistry between Batman and Catwoman.
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Come to Spidey. I promise you'll get plenty of fish and milk in prison.
After this video, make sure to watch my video essay about the motivation of Heath Ledger's Joker in the legendary The Dark Knight. Oh yes, he definitely has one, even if the Joker himself claims otherwise. That video will be on the channel soon, so subscribe so you don't miss it. Prince Namor, Marvel's Aquaman, also appears in the animated series, along with his cousin, Namorita, in one of the episodes.
Hey kids! Want to shoot some of that our way?
Oh. Betty Brant serves as Peter's love interest, which keeps the spirit of the original 1967 series alive. Although, that does not stop Peter from having a romance with Medusa from the Inhumans. Where is her husband, Black Bolt, looking? The main episode formula also follows the path set by the first animated series. A villain shows up, sees Spider-Man, and loses. The villains include familiar Parker enemies like Dr. Octopus, the Lizard, and others, but also antagonists from other major comic book lines. So, the hero ends up facing Magneto in one episode, then the Red Skull in another, while saving Captain America.
It's not the greatest fit, but all of us crime fighters can't afford designers' long johns.
And the conflict with the ruler of Latveria, Dr. Doom, takes up an entire 6 episodes spread throughout the season.
Gosh, I wish I'd brought my autograph book.
Your attempts at humor bore me, Spider-Man.
The animated series gives you an important feeling that Spider-Man exists inside a much larger universe. A rich one with its own rules, its own characters, and big events happening all around him. But it does not do this quite as well as the second animated series, which became much more popular with general audiences.
Spider-Man and his amazing friends, Iceman and Firestar.
I'm talking about Spider-Man and his amazing friends. which, unlike the first show, lasted for 3 seasons, even though it actually had fewer episodes overall. The setup is this. Peter Parker lives with Bobby Drake, also known as Iceman from the X-Men, a mutant with freezing powers, and Firestar, also known as Angelica Jones, a completely new Marvel character.
Spider friends, go for it!
Originally, Johnny Storm, the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four, was supposed to be in her place, but there were licensing problems. In general, selling off licenses to different characters would later become one of the biggest obstacles to building a shared cinematic universe. This trio of superheroes lives at Aunt May's house and fights evil from different comic book stories, constantly interacting with other Marvel characters. In the 1970s, Marvel had launched a very popular comic series called Marvel Team Up, where every issue paired Spider-Man with another famous superhero, from Iron Man to Ghost Rider.
Matt Murdock. Boy, am I glad to see my friendly neighborhood lawyer.
Crossovers proved they were great at attracting audience attention, and soon that idea moved to television. The very first episode of the animated series features a costume party full of references to the Marvel Universe.
Everybody's dressed as a comic book hero!
In episode 6 of the first season, the superhero trio teams up with Captain America, Doctor Strange, Namor, and Shauna, the love interest of Khazar who I mentioned earlier. Entire episodes are built around encounters with X-Men, Thor, or the Hulk. By the way, the episode Spidey Goes to Hollywood, where the Green Monster appears for the first time, became a kind of backdoor pilot for a solo Bruce Banner series.
Smash!
Yeah, but look out!
What is especially interesting is that both 1981 shows take place in the same universe. Sometimes scenes from the first project even appear as flashbacks in the second. Oh right, we almost forgot the true highlight of the cartoon, a little dog named Miss Lion who joins many of our heroes' adventures. The shows were rerun on television several times, and his amazing friends in particular became widely loved, but still not as loved as the next project. The true holy grail for Spider-Man fans. For many people, their love for the character started with this animated series.
New York City. If only everything down there was really as peaceful as it looks from up here.
It's often placed alongside other outstanding shows from the 90s like Batman and X-Men. So, what makes them so special? All these animated series treat the source material with real respect and bring beloved comic book stories to the screen in a slightly reworked form. If you want to understand the main arcs of Peter Parker's adventures, at least up to 1994, watching this series is honestly enough. The show lasted for 5 full seasons, which was an absolute record for Spider-Man adaptations at the time. So, let us look what's inside.
It's Spider-Man!
What? Spider-Man? Where? Where? Oh, I just get so flustered when I meet a celebrity. I just don't know what to say.
Spider-Man from the 90s bursts onto the screen with an opening that immediately shows what kind of show this is. A little CGI and those guitar riffs in the intro create the feeling that we are moving into something new. By the way, the music for the opening was written by Joe Perry from Aerosmith, which even gets mentioned in one of the episodes.
How about that guy from Aerosmith? Maybe something more traditional.
At first, the animated series follows the classic superhero formula. We meet a villain, fight the villain, defeat the villain. But later, the storytelling becomes more horizontal. Horizontal storytelling means not the one episode, one plot structure, but arcs that stretch across several episodes with storylines gradually unfolding. In the first 7 episodes, we see confrontations with Lizard, Dr. Octopus, Mysterio. Even though these stories are not yet tied into one major dramatic arc, the characters still develop from one plot to the next. In the very first story, Eddie Brock is humiliated by Peter, and that will pay off very soon. The animated series never feels like just another disposable superhero product. It genuinely tries to lean into drama and character development, and it does that extremely well.
She's right. Spidey never did turn his back when he was needed.
Already in the 8th episode, we are introduced to Venom.
Parker, how on earth did you get in the middle of Manhattan, hanging upside down in a costume you've never seen before?
Let's talk about him in more detail. Venom appeared in the comics in the 80s and quickly became a fan favorite among Spider-Man readers. In the comics, during a huge crossover called Secret Wars, Parker finds a strange alien organism, a symbiote, which turns into a black suit and begins bringing out the less pleasant signs of Peter's personality. Later, Eddie Brock, who has his own grudge against Parker, merges with the symbiote and becomes Venom, the dark opposite of Spider-Man, and later one of the most interesting anti-heroes in the Marvel Universe. In the 1994 animated series, his backstory was changed a little, and Secret Wars were saved for later. What kind of wars am I talking about? Secret Wars was an epic crossover launched in 1984. A mysterious being called the Beyonder transported many heroes and villains to a distant planet so they could fight and answer the big question: who is stronger, good or evil? That is where Peter finds the symbiote. We will see how the Marvel Cinematic Universe handles this setup in the 6th Avengers movie. For a franchise losing popularity, it sounds like a perfect fit for now. Minimum creativity in the premise, maximum fan service in the content. In the animated series, however, Venom is brought back from the moon by astronauts, including Jameson's son, John. After the first fairly classic season focused on introducing villains and having Spider-Man fight them, the series moves to a new level. From this point on, each season becomes a larger story with an overarching plot. In the second season, titled Neogenic Nightmare, Parker begins mutating into a multi-armed creature.
The serum accelerated your mutation instead of retarding it.
Think it'll ruin my career as a swimsuit model?
Many famous characters, from Kraven to the Punisher, begin hunting him. Vampire Michael Morbius also plays a major role.
I've got to reverse this. There is something else. I feel a hunger.
Later making his epic jump to the big screen through Jared Leto. But the story of Sony's failed Spider-Man universe definitely deserves a separate video. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in that. Another fan favorite also drops by, the Vampire Hunter Blade. A great storyline for future Spider-Man movies. In the third season, under the overall title Sins of the Fathers, the shared theme becomes especially interesting. What first looks like a collection of separate stories is actually connected by the theme of fathers and children, and the responsibility children carry for the sins of their parents. Mary Jane's relationship with her father. The previously mentioned Robbie Robertson, Peter's colleague, puts his own son's life in danger because he is connected to the creation of the villain Tombstone. And most importantly, the relationship between Norman and Harry Osborn, the Green Goblins. This storyline, by the way, became the foundation for the first film in Sam Raimi's trilogy. Even its outcome is taken directly from the comics and in one form or another remains unchanged.
Osborn, take my hand! There is only the Green Goblin!
We also get the appearance of Madam Web, now sadly associated with Dakota Johnson's version. A quick note about her: unlike in the comics where a rare disease turned her into a medium, in the animated series, Madam Web is a kind of cosmic being sent by the Beyonder to prepare Spider-Man for the beginning of Secret Wars. The fourth season is called Partners, although honestly it could easily have been called Sins of the Fathers too. Most of it focuses on Peter's relationship with Felicia Hardy, who becomes the Black Cat. The reason for this transformation is also tied to her father, a criminal known as the Cat, and Harry Osborn becomes the next Green Goblin after learning about his legacy.
You're out there ruining my reputation! I'm not you! Can't you get that through your head?
Peter reveals his secret identity to Mary Jane, whom he believed had been dead for a long time. In the third season, she falls from a bridge, a scene later used more than once in the feature films. In the comics, that fate belonged to Gwen Stacy, who only appears here in the final episode.
Stop! Hey, can't your fiancé give you a kiss anymore?
Great, Parker. Here you're engaged to somebody you don't even know.
The reason is the comic book canon, which by the 80s had tied Peter to Mary Jane for a long time. In the final 5th season, Peter finally marries Mary Jane, but she turns out to be a clone. And here at least, the clone saga reaches the screen in a version closer to the original.
She loves Peter Parker more than anything in the world.
Except in the comics, the role played here by Mary Jane was filled by Gwen Stacy. On top of that, we get Peter searching for the truth about his parents who may have been Soviet spies. A trip to Moscow is included.
Of course, their government is in turmoil. You don't suppose he's going to try to get them to elect him their leader?
The long-awaited Secret Wars finally happen, and the real cherry on top arrives in the final 2 episodes. That's where the multiverse appears. Together with a group of Spider-Men from parallel dimensions, Peter has to fight Carnage, who has merged with one of these Spider-Men. This truly climactic ending leads to Peter Parker web-swinging with his own creator, Stan Lee.
I've always wanted to experience real web-slinging.
If we start listing every cameo and every storyline, we could get stuck here for a very long time. So, let's give the 1994 animated series a round of applause and move on.
The people love me!
In the late 90s, Saban, the studio best known for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, planned to launch a 26-episode series called The Amazing Spider-Man. But the rights to the familiar imagery of Spidey went to Sony, which was developing a feature film with Tobey Maguire. Left with only the name, a few other details, and a strong desire to make something anyway, Saban came to the following solution: send Peter Parker into space. So, here's the setup of Spider-Man Unlimited. A spacecraft launch is being prepared with John, the son of J. Jonah Jameson, on board. Venom and Carnage sneak into the ship, along with Spider-Man, who is trying to stop them. As a result, the whole group separately ends up on Counter-Earth, a planet inhabited by humans and strange humanoid mutants called Bestials. The main villain of the series is the High Evolutionary, born Herbert Wyndham.
Listen, Mr. Evolutionary, can I call you High for short?
Who's trying to turn Counter-Earth into a true paradise, naturally without being too bothered by oppression and discrimination. Modern viewers know all of this from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Both Counter-Earth and the High Evolutionary played major roles there. In the animated series, this is the threat Peter has to fight while wearing a nanosuit created by Reed Richards, the leader of the Fantastic Four.
The all-new, all-improved Spider-Man.
He joins the Resistance and teams up with alternate versions of villains such as the Green Goblin and the Vulture. Yes, the famous bad guys from our world are actually pretty decent people on Counter-Earth.
I vowed to do everything I could to stop human suffering.
And in his free time, when he's not being a hero, Peter rents an apartment, works at a newspaper with a local version of J. Jonah Jameson.
Mr. Mineo, do you mind if I call you JJ?
What are you talking about?
Never mind.
Basically, business as usual. That's the whole animated series in a nutshell. Peter Parker does his usual Peter Parker things, just on another Earth. Among the antagonists, we get the Knights of Wundagore, the High Evolutionary's elite unit, made up of Lord Tiger, Sir Ram, and Lady Vermin.
Spider-Man and the Rat Lady. Who'da thunk it?
And of course Venom and Carnage, who have their own plans on top of the main problem. One notable detail is the first appearance of John Jameson, not to be confused with J. Jonah Jameson, as Man-Wolf, which he had already become in the comics. The animated series lasted 13 episodes with 1 year break between the 3rd and 4th episodes, and was successfully cancelled on a juicy cliffhanger. In short, everyone died.
Millions of spores will be shot into the atmosphere, bringing all other life to an end.
The ending of Spider-Man Unlimited can easily be compared to the series' Mortal Kombat Conquest. I'll get to that amazing franchise soon enough. Despite its clearly standalone, almost leftover nature, meaning it was not really connected to the larger canon, the series turned out to be quite interesting and dramatic. They say scripts for the second season have been uploaded and can be found online. A small reward for the fans at least. But now it's time to move on to one of the main courses, Sam Raimi's trilogy. But before that, let us take one very small stop and talk about one more screen appearance of Spider-Man.
Hello, Ali.
It actually happened before all the other live-action appearances of Spidey and is called 3 Dev Adam, or 3 Giant Men, or 3 Mighty Men, or something like that. It was made in Turkey in 1973 without an official Marvel license. Naturally, it was later pulled from circulation, so let's figure out why. What could they possibly do with Spider-Man?
Adios, Mafia.
Right at the beginning, he orders a woman to be buried in the sand and cut apart by a motorboat propeller. Then he strangles a woman in the shower, in the finest tradition of Psycho. Yes, in this movie, Spidey is the villain, wearing a red and green suit and some truly impressive eyebrows. Captain America and the legendary American luchador known as El Santo, meaning the Saint, arrive to stop him. The whole movie feels like it was directed by J. Jonah Jameson himself, with all his constant attacks on Spider-Man.
Spider-Man for the two-bit criminal he really is.
After several incredibly spectacular action sequences, Spider-Man is defeated, as expected. Captain America celebrates and his friends make fun of him in a very graceful way.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've definitely covered everything, we can finally move on to Sam Raimi. By the way, if I miss any screen appearance, definitely write about it in the comments below. However, stage productions do not count. Sam Raimi is a unique director who can work across completely different genres. He has the wonderfully insane and ridiculously funny Evil Dead movies behind him, the tense western The Quick and the Dead, the thrillers A Simple Plan and The Gift, and even a sports drama about baseball. But in each of them, you can still feel Raimi's directing style, that strange, slightly awkward weirdness of everything happening on screen.
Son of a... Oh!
Have you already watched The Ultimate History of the Evil Dead on my channel? It's a detailed story about the adventures of Ash and how this fan favorite, despite all his coolness and all his greatness, slowly turned into a toxic hero who actually hurt the franchise's popularity. And yes, there's a whole conspiracy there, so definitely check it out after this video. So, Sam Raimi is not always trying to make you forget that you are watching a movie. The cinematic style pours out of the screen, not destroying the illusion but making it stronger. In other words, the perfect choice to direct a comic book movie. The road to a feature-length Spider-Man adaptation was very long and very difficult. Different versions were almost launched several times with different directors. From Tobe Hooper, the creator of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, to directors of Chuck Norris action movies. On top of that, the script kept changing. In some versions, the story was about Parker transforming into a giant spider and then being hunted. Hello, neogenic nightmare. Except there, the focus was more on body horror. If you have seen David Cronenberg's The Fly, you can probably imagine what we almost got.
How you doing? Good.
In the 90s, James Cameron worked on the script. He wanted Leonardo DiCaprio for the lead role, with Electro and Sandman as the villains. The whole production hell was made even worse by licensing problems, with the rights moving from studio to studio until they finally ended up with Sony. And then the 9/11 tragedy happened, which caused another delay for the film, and many scenes involving the World Trade Center had to be changed because the wound was still too fresh. Even in the first trailer, Spidey catches criminals in a web stretched between the Twin Towers. Sam Raimi was chosen to direct, and Tobey Maguire was cast in the title role. In the original script, Dr. Octopus was supposed to appear alongside the Green Goblin, but Raimi decided to drop the second villain and focus on the energy between fathers and sons. Norman Osborn, played by the brilliant Willem Dafoe, feels a strange affection for Peter, the son who's not actually his, while his relationship with Harry, played by James Franco, does not work at all.
A word to the not-so-wise about your little girlfriend. Do what you need to with her, then broom her fast.
It's a great conflict that works both internally and externally. Mary Jane Watson, played by Kirsten Dunst, is introduced as the love interest. Uncle Ben is played by Cliff Robertson, who in his younger years won an Oscar for the film adaptation of Flowers for Algernon.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Aunt May is played by Rosemary Harris, also the winner of many prestigious awards.
How you were meant for great things. You won't disappoint him.
The casting is excellent from every angle. I've already spoken many times about the greatness of J.K. Simmons.
Crap, mega crap. I'll give you $200 for all of them.
And if we look a little deeper, we can spot Raimi's own lucky charms. Bruce Campbell, Ash himself, appears in his first role in this trilogy.
The Amazing Spider-Man!
The director's brother, Ted Raimi, also moves from film to film. Even Xena warrior princess herself, Lucy Lawless, gets a small cameo. Speaking of cameos, after first appearing in X-Men, and we're not counting the old Hulk TV movies here, Stan Lee begins taking his place in almost every Marvel movie. This time, he heroically saves a child from falling debris, and future Oscar winner Octavia Spencer appears for just a few seconds, because the road to fame can be long.
And you are indeed participating on your own free will?
Yes.
Down the hall to the ramp. May God be with you.
According to Raimi himself, he had loved Spider-Man comics since childhood, and that shows in many details. In the Daily Bugle office, someone named Eddie is mentioned, clearly a hint at the future host of Venom. Peter works, or rather used to work, for Curt Connors, who becomes the Lizard in the comics.
I was late for work and Dr. Connors fired me.
You were late again?
Norman Osborn works with Dr. Mendel Strom, who becomes an evil robot in the comics, while here he apparently becomes nobody. Raimi's whole trilogy is full of references and mentions that tease the imagination with possible future events. True, most of those setups never actually pay off. Spider-Man from 2002 has this magical feeling of unreality, which makes sense in a story about radioactive spiders and superpowers, but here it is something else. You can criticize the not always perfect CGI and the very questionable Green Goblin suit. The movie shifts from fairly understandable action scenes, explosions, and so on, to bombs that turn people into skeletons. Good thing the Goblin apparently only had one of those. Although it is funny that under these conditions, Raimi refused to use web shooters, the devices Peter uses in the comics for web shooting. He felt a high school kid could not realistically invent something like that. So he replaced them with organic webbing that comes straight out of Peter's hands.
Shazam!
Many people do not accept Maguire's version of Parker at all, saying he's too emotional and cries too much. Not the Peter they wanted, but all of that is part of the overall picture, creating the feeling of a comic book on screen. Not visually exactly, but spiritually. Although many elements of the outside world are also made for stylistic beauty. For example, Spidey's mirrored eyes exist to create those gorgeous reflections. Maguire's acting is very interesting, but it's easy to understand why some people may not like it, or even find it kind of annoying. And that does not only apply to him. Every character reacts to events in an exaggerated way. Peter's pure delight when he sees Mary Jane, Harry's disappointment when his father shows affection toward Parker, Norman Osborn doing basically anything.
I started this company. You know how much I sacrificed?
But this is intentional. It's like we're looking at a comic book panel and reading emotions through facial expressions. You may dislike Raimi's trilogy for these exact reasons, but those same reasons may also make you fall completely in love with it. Judging by the number of iconic scenes that entered pop culture and would later be parodied again and again, the movie clearly became unforgettable. Peter hides from Norman on the ceiling, but a drop of blood falls and draws attention to him. The first appearance of his powers followed by the fight with Flash Thompson, and of course the famous upside-down kiss in the rain. Audiences loved it, the box office was huge, and the sequel did not take long to arrive. With your permission, I will temporarily skip the 2003 animated series so we don't interrupt the story of Raimi's trilogy. We'll get back to it later. Let's keep going. The sequel comes out 2 years later with a bigger budget and even bigger box office ambitions. All the actors from the first film return, even though there was some concern that Tobey Maguire might be replaced by another performer. The reason was his health, or more specifically, a back injury that had flared up. But luckily that concern passed, and the whole situation even gets referenced in the movie itself.
Oh, my back!
The main villain is Otto Octavius, played by Alfred Molina.
Getting on my nerves.
I have a knack for that.
Not anymore.
The story combines several different sources at once, episodes 4 of the first season of the 1994 animated series, and several comic book arcs. From the animated series, the movie takes the entire setup with Dr. Octopus, while from the comics it takes Peter's attempts to give up his superhero alter ego. The scene where Parker throws his costume into a trash can comes straight from the comic book pages. And Aunt May being grabbed by a tentacle and carried up toward a rooftop had already happened in the hit animated series too. Except there the kidnapper was Scorpion.
Hand her over!
Of course! Butterfingers.
The main theme of the sequel is the struggle with identity for the three central characters. What matters more to Peter, the responsibility that comes with his powers or his personal life? Can Doc Ock get himself together, or rather get himself into his own tentacles and stop carrying out his destructive plan? And finally, will Harry Osborn give in to revenge? Or will he manage to overcome his rage toward the man he believes killed his father?
I can look into your eyes as you die.
The movie puts a major focus on Peter's everyday life, trying to show all the problems that come with living a double life.
Sorry doesn't pay the rent. And don't try to sneak past me. I have ears like a cat and eyes like a rodent.
Among the major Marvel Universe references, we can point out the mention of Doctor Strange.
What are we gonna call this guy?
Doctor Strange.
That's pretty good. But it's taken.
So, he exists in this universe too, which makes it a shame we never actually get to see him. We also meet Jameson's son, John. Remember, this is the same character Peter traveled to counter Earth in Spider-Man Unlimited. But here, his role is reduced to being yet another love interest for Mary Jane. Bruce Campbell appears for the second time, now in a different role. So it's no surprise that viewers started looking for some deeper meaning and saw him as the future Mysterio.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. No one will be seated after the doors are closed.
It helps maintain the illusion.
And that may actually be true, but we'll save that topic for the discussion of the unrealized fourth film. Stan Lee secures his place in Marvel movies, once again saving bystanders during the villain attack. Unlike in the first film, Peter now regularly exposes himself in public, revealing forbidden body parts to everyone around him. His face obviously, Mary Jane, Harry, a whole train full of passengers.
Hi.
Even the villain Octavius all find out who he is under the mask. Although for that last one it does not really help much. Sam Raimi pulled off a very difficult task. In the opinion of many people, the second film surpassed the first in everything from action to drama. On top of that, Spider-Man 2 remained for a long time the only Marvel comic book movie to win an Oscar, in this case for Best Visual Effects. A little later, an extended cut was released under the title Spider-Man 2.1, adding longer action scenes, a bit more elevator conversation, and a few other small moments. But the most important addition, of course, is J.K. Simmons jumping around in the Spider-Man suit. The ending with Mary Jane waiting for Peter has an almost magical effect on the viewer and lets the imagination run wild about how their life together will be shown in the third film. But things will turn out to be far less perfect. The third film received a truly massive budget. According to some reports, it reached $350 million, which would have made it the most expensive movie ever made at the time. Raimi wanted to use two villains, Sandman because his powers had interesting visual potential, and Harry Osborn because his transformation into the next Goblin had to be completed.
Tell it to my father. Raise him from the dead.
The producers insisted on adding two more elements, Venom and Gwen Stacy, and in the end, that did not help the movie. The introduction of the symbiote overloaded the story. Now the film had to develop not only Sandman, Flint Marko, played by Thomas Hayden Church, who was also suddenly made responsible for Uncle Ben's death, but also Eddie Brock, played by Topher Grace. And the alien organism cannot just attach itself to Eddie right away. According to canon, it first has to try to corrupt Peter, and only after that move on to the more available Eddie, which means the film also has to spend time on Peter's dark side, and with your permission, we will not talk too much about that. Come on, you saw it. Truly the emotional backbone of the entire movie. Gwen Stacy also feels out of place. Chronologically, in the comics, she came before Mary Jane, and her death was a major story moment. But if you've already built the whole red-haired love interest storyline, adding a side romance is, at the very least, not very ethical. Gwen becomes just a tool for showing Dark Peter, not a fully developed character. The same goes for her father, Captain Stacy, played by James Cromwell. There's simply no room for him in this overloaded script. If we remember the 1994 Spider-Man animated series, Gwen appeared there as a fan service element in the final episode, and it felt like an elegant nod to the fans. Here, from a story point of view, it turns into a chaotic mix of ingredients. And yet the movie is not actually that bad in everything else. The action is spectacular. Sandman really does look great visually. Some scenes and storylines are excellent, especially everything connected to Harry Osborn's arc. But as one complete film, the third installment works worse than the previous two. The same cannot be said about the box office. Until Far From Home came out, Spider-Man 3 was the highest-grossing Spider-Man movie, so a fourth film was approved and development moved forward at full speed. John Malkovich was planned for the role of the main villain, Vulture. Concept art shows Mysterio, who also was supposed to get his place in the story. Bruce Campbell, who had already played 3 roles in Raimi's films, would have fit that perfectly.
Becker.
Parker.
That is what I said. Becker.
And the fourth film was not supposed to be the end of it. Raimi planned to introduce the Sinister Six, a coalition of villains made up of Dr. Octopus, Vulture, Electro, Sandman, Mysterio, and Kraven the Hunter. A solo Venom movie was also planned. There were tons of plans, but creative disagreements between Sam Raimi and the producers led to his departure from the project. Tobey Maguire left the franchise after him. Sony decided to reboot Spider-Man. Now, let's quickly go through the animated series of the 2000s. Right after the release of the first film in Sam Raimi's trilogy, MTV launched a loose continuation of the movie in animated form. At first, the plan was to adapt the growing Ultimate comic book line, which was basically a reboot of the main beloved stories from the canon, but from a slightly different angle. But the popularity of Raimi's film did its job. The series came out under the title Spider-Man: The New Animated Series. The first thing that stands out is the visual style. The entire show was created with CGI, and despite all its imperfections, it still looks pretty interesting.
I'm Spider-Man.
This project is not canon to Tobey Maguire's universe, as shown by its different multiverse number, but a lot of things are clearly taken from that version. Norman Osborn's death at Spider-Man's hands is mentioned regularly. Harry is tormented by his desire for revenge, and Mary Jane remembers her kiss with Spidey. A little note about her: she has never been this openly into Peter before. The unevenness of this romantic storyline is a little alarming. Mary Jane throws herself into Parker's arms every chance she gets. Then in the next episode starts a romance at the theater, and again reaches for Peter while also kissing Spider-Man on the side. Let's call her animated version inconsistent.
Thanks for letting me do that.
Not a problem.
Aunt May, meanwhile, is simply not in the series at all. The creators did not want older people's moral lectures getting in the way of young viewers having fun. In every episode, and there are only 13 of them, Spidey classically faces a new villain, and it's worth noting how high the death rate is among the bad guys here. Usually unintentionally, but still pretty brutally. The voice cast deserves special attention. Peter Parker is voiced by Neil Patrick Harris. Kingpin now looks like Michael Clark Duncan, who played him in Daredevil with Ben Affleck. And yes, he voices him here too, which probably means that Daredevil and the Spider-Man of the 2000s exist in the same universe.
You've done your country a great service, Spider-Man. Now, not a word of this to anyone.
And it keeps going. Kurt Connors, also known as the Lizard, is voiced by Rob Zombie. And then there are Clancy Brown, Gina Gershon, John C. McGinley. MTV clearly did not cheap out on the voice acting, but the ratings did not make the producers happy, and the series was canceled after only one season. In the best tradition of ambitious but prematurely canceled shows, it ends on a dramatic note. The telepathic twins Roxanne and Roland manipulate Spidey and force him to throw his own friend off a roof. After that, he throws his costume into the bay.
Goodbye, Spider-Man.
Fast and bright, like a flash, the series never earned widespread love, but it remained the first and, for a long time, the only CGI Spider-Man on television.
See ya.
In 2008, a new animated series called The Spectacular Spider-Man premiered on the CW. At first, they considered using the subtitle Amazing, but decided that Spectacular would attract more attention. Besides, that was also the title of the first Spider-Man comic book spin-off, so it was symbolic too. In essence, this was another full reboot of the series, based on the early comic book arcs from the golden era of Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, and John Romita Sr.
I am the Spectacular Spider-Man!
Peter Parker is back in school helping his aunt, working part-time at the Daily Bugle, and being torn between several love interests: Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane Watson, and Liz Allen. I haven't talked about Liz yet. Her most famous screen version can be found in Homecoming with Tom Holland, and we'll get to that soon. The classic tropes from the old comics were mixed with some details from newer storylines. For example, Earth 1610, home of the Ultimate Spider-Man. That was the alternate take on Spidey, launched in 2000 by writer Brian Michael Bendis. In the animated series, Eddie Brock is not a bully journalist, but Peter's childhood friend who works in science. Some changes, however, were invented by the creators of the show themselves. Take Shocker, for example. Cool costume, but not much of a personality. So with a light touch from the writers, Shocker became Montana, the cowboy from the Enforcers gang. They were some mid-level villains from the early comics. And what's especially interesting is that later Montana would also become Shocker in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, played by Logan Marshall Green.
I'm the Shocker. I shock people. What is this, pro wrestling? Whatever, old man. Come on.
That's the influence of a small animated series on the Disney giant. The main conflict is built around Peter and the criminal bosses of New York. First with Tombstone, whom we will mention often in this video, and in the second season with the Green Goblin. Originally, writers planned to use Kingpin instead of the stone-faced mob boss, but changed their minds.
Back off! I just took down the Rhino. A pale guy in a suit doesn't sleep.
By the 2000s, Wilson Fisk had become associated mostly as Daredevil's enemy first, and only then as Spider-Man's, even though he actually first appeared in the comics about the hero swinging on webs. Peter Parker grows as a hero, suffers over Uncle Ben, and fights criminals. Sounds familiar, right? We've seen all of this on screen many times, but the Spectacular Spider-Man is still considered by many to be one of the best Spider-Man adaptations ever made. The reason is its perfect balance of humor and drama, fan service, and original choices. That is something many Spider-Man projects never managed to learn. Some fell into pure clowning. Others pushed too hard into heavy drama. The Spectacular Spider-Man is simply very well written and excitingly animated. And for a great animated series, that is almost all you need, except for legal stability. After the second season, Disney began the process of buying Marvel. Some rights stayed with Sony, some went to the new owners, and in the end, there was simply no way to continue the story. The studios blamed the cancellation on insufficient ratings, and the series was shut down after 2 13-episode seasons, leaving many storylines open for possible continuation that never happened. The creators had planned 5 full seasons and an even stronger dramatic build-up.
Don't apologize. I never do.
To this day, fans keep asking for the return of their beloved show, but without success. Although we'll come back to it again later. The next reboot would happen in 2012. A few months before the release of the new feature-length version of Parker's Adventures, Disney XD premiered an animated series called Ultimate Spider-Man. Later it would grow into a larger shared animated universe. And Earth 12041 would include Avengers Assemble, Hulk and the Agents of Smash, and Guardians of the Galaxy. Ultimate Spider-Man became the longest-running Spider-Man series, with 4 seasons of 26 episodes each. Unlike the Spectacular Spider-Man, critics were not exactly thrilled with this new Spidey. Why, you ask? Well, let's talk about it.
I want to shield train you to be a better Spider-Man, the Ultimate Spider-Man.
The story skips the origin and jumps straight to Spider-Man already working as a hero. Nick Fury contacts him and offers him a place on a young superhero team, after some proper training, of course. In the first season, Peter has to work with Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Nova, and White Tiger. The main strength of this animated series is how packed it is. Trying to squeeze 5 villains into a 2-hour feature film is a questionable choice. But doing that across more than 100 episodes is a completely different story. Spidey is almost never alone. Superhero colleagues and their villains constantly drop by.
Okay, you want a hint? No hint. It's clobbering time!
Ultimate Spider-Man is overflowing with the feeling of a comic book Marvel universe, full of characters who constantly cross paths and interact. Familiar stories are presented a little differently, mixing the comic book canon of the main Earth 616 with elements from the Ultimate Universe. Most critics complain that this Spider-Man was way too cheerful. Jokes pour out of him every second, and being upset is just not really his style. Even when the evil Grand Master is preparing to destroy the entire population of Manhattan, including Aunt May, Peter still keeps his cool.
I'm gonna fight, and I'm gonna get Aunt May back.
Season 3 is subtitled Web Warriors. Following the tradition of the 90s Spider-Man, the final 2 seasons have an overarching story. Peter tries to assemble yet another superhero team. Characters who do not appear on screen that often show up here. Agent Venom, Cloak and Dagger, the Inhumans, Red Hulk, and others. Most importantly, Miles Morales makes his screen debut here as the new Spider-Man.
Don't freak out. Huh?
We'll talk about him in more detail when we get into the Spider-Verse. Several episodes in the 3rd and 4th seasons are devoted to the multiverse. This is where we see Spider-Man Noir.
Do I look familiar?
Not anymore, kid.
Yikes! Note to self, stock up on moisturizer.
Miguel O'Hara from the year 2099.
Spider-Man is just a legend from the past that someone is trying to recreate.
Did you say a legend?
Spider-Ham, and Spider-Gwen, familiar to many viewers from Sony's hit animated movie. And also Spider-Girl, Spider-Knight, and others. The 4th season is largely focused on the battle against a new version of the Sinister Six. Ultimate Spider-Man is basically unlimited fan service, without worrying too much about how dramatic everything on screen feels. On the one hand, that is an obvious flaw and a perfect example for anyone who says these comic book cartoons are soulless. On the other hand, it's a great gift for fans who simply enjoy this world and its characters. Alright, so what about the new live-action Spidey movie? Pragmatic producers, apparently sensing that Sam Raimi's 4th film might never happen, started developing a script for a possible reboot at the same time as pre-production on Tobey Maguire's new adventure. And in the end, that is exactly what happened. Raimi's franchise quietly stalled, and the reboot was given the green light. They brought in experienced music video director Mark Webb. You've probably seen some of his music videos, although at that point, he had directed only one feature film, the romantic drama 500 Days of Summer. Andrew Garfield was cast as Peter Parker, even though the entire internet was pushing for Donald Glover, who would have brought a completely different energy to the character. Maguire's Spider-Man is sensitive and insecure. Garfield's Peter makes a lot of jokes and actually knows how to talk to girls. And as Spider-Man, he can be downright brutal. The interrogation scene with the car thief was clearly meant to be funny, but at some point you almost feel sorry for the guy.
Help!
Did you see the way he looks at him? That is not exactly your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. That kind of behavior feels more like Batman than Spidey. And honestly, there's quite a few parallels with Gotham's vigilante here. Almost all the action happens at night. As I mentioned, this Spidey is pretty harsh and driven by revenge.
You like beating on girls? Like beating on old men?
As a tribute to the original stories, the artificial web shooters return, while organic webbing is left in the past. There was a reason they hired a director who knows how to handle romance. The best part of the film is Gwen Stacy, played by Emma Stone, and her relationship with Peter. The movie simply refuses to follow the usual path for this kind of storyline. Parker reveals his alter ego to the girl he loves without any long dramatic ceremony. The ending with the funeral of a loved one echoes the finale of Raimi's first film, except this time Peter does not give up his chance at happiness.
Don't make promises you can't keep, Mr. Parker.
Yeah, but those are the best kind.
The insane chemistry between Garfield and Stone, who were actually dating during filming, becomes the real highlight of the movie. And Gwen is not just the usual damsel in distress. She can stand up for herself and is not limited to begging for help.
You leave right now. That is an order, okay?
I'm gonna get everybody out.
Did you hear?
The villain is Kurt Connors, also known as the Lizard, played by Rhys Evans. Even though we had already seen this story on screen more than once, on the big screen it still feels pretty interesting.
Poor Peter Parker, all alone.
He's not alone.
Once again, a lot of time is spent on Peter's relationship with Uncle Ben, played by Martin Sheen. But the film also adds an investigation into the past of Peter's parents, something Raimi's trilogy stayed silent about. Mark Webb said he wanted to make a story about Parker, not just Spider-Man, and that story began long before One Bite. Since Raimi's time, CGI had taken a major leap forward, and the action here looks more believable. Peter's behavior during the school fight with the Lizard, where he really moves like a spider, deserves an approving nod. That scene also gives us one of Stan Lee's best cameos. Michael Papa John wanted to play Uncle Ben's killer again, after already being connected to that crime in Raimi's trilogy. But instead, he got the role of the driver for Oscorp executive Rajit Rava, played by Irfan Khan. The film was successful with both audiences and critics, and a sequel immediately went into development. The post-credits scene hinted at the appearance of a third side in the conflict and future villains for the series. A mysterious man visits Dr. Connors in prison, later revealed to be Gustav Fiers, someone gathering an army against Spider-Man. In the comics, he was behind one version of the Sinister Six. The plans for the franchise were clear, but how would all this turn out in the sequel? A pattern starts to emerge. If you put too many bets on one movie, try to fill it with too many characters and too many hints at the future without proper setup, the film stops working. A similar thing happened with Raimi's Spider-Man 3, but not quite this badly. Let's count how many characters, each of whom could have played a major role in the story, were introduced almost in passing. Max Dillon, also known as Electro, played by Jamie Foxx, a strange version of an insecure man whom, for some reason, you just don't really believe.
Spidey, how was your morning? Aces, man. Aces.
Harry Osborn, played by Dane DeHaan, goes through this entire transformation into a villain in just one film.
You're a fraud, Spider-Man!
Remember Franco's version needed 3 movies for that arc? Norman Osborn, played by Chris Cooper, appears and conveniently dies. Although we know that in comics, things like that are not always permanent, unless you're Uncle Ben. Paul Giamatti plays Alexei Sitsevich. The Rhino appears in 2 scenes, never fully gets to fight Spider-Man, but does bless us with some absolutely awkward acting.
I'm a killer! Oh, okay.
BJ Novak drops by for a couple of scenes as Alistair Smythe. You may remember him from the 1994 animated series, The Guy in the Hover Chair. Later, he also gains abilities and becomes a Spider Slayer. Working alongside Harry Osborn is Felicia Hardy, played by Felicity Jones, also known as Black Cat. At Ravencroft, we meet Dr. Ashley Kafka, who has changed gender here and is now played by Martin Kasokis. The character played an important role in the 90s comics, but here the movie deals with him pretty quickly. At least they removed Peter's father returning from the dead from the final cut, although that scene does exist among the deleted scenes.
He's dead! Who are you?
I am your father, Peter.
The movie was already overloaded with characters as it was. They also dropped the introduction of Mary Jane, for which they had already cast Divergent star Shailene Woodley. And thank God for that, because with her appearance, the drama of Peter losing Gwen would have lost all its power. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 can be criticized for a lot of things. Underdeveloped characters, humor that does not always land, and a feeling of incompleteness despite having the longest runtime of any Spider-Man film. But the scene of Gwen's death and its aftermath are filmed in an incredibly moving way. That feeling of loss you carry with you when leaving the theater is the main thing the movie leaves behind. Although the relationship itself is not as satisfying this time, the strongest element of the first film, Peter plus Gwen, becomes one of the weakest parts of the sequel. The creators moved away from the classic Spider-Man drama at the end of the previous film, only to reset everything within the first few minutes of the sequel.
I don't know, what does that make you?
It makes me not able to live with myself.
Still looking at the massive success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Sony decides to build its own. At least 2 sequels are announced, along with a Sinister Six movie, solo films about Venom, Black Cat, and even Silver Sable, the leader of a mercenary team. A film about the future Spider-Man from 2099 is also announced. The ending of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 shows Vulture's wings and Dr. Octopus's tentacles, but Webb and Garfield do not want to stay for 2 more films. At most, only for a third. Sony begins negotiating with Disney to bring Spider-Man into Captain America: Civil War, but the Mouse House is not interested in merging 2 huge cinematic universes. So a reboot becomes the convenient solution for everyone, and the Tom Holland era begins.
Oh, Spider-Man.
But before we reach the final stretch, let's look back at the title of this video. Every Spider-Man on screen. Besides the main films and animated series, there are countless appearances of Spidey in other cartoons, fan films, and old oddities like the Turkish 3 Giant Men. Fan-made short films were already appearing back in the 60s, and there was even a parody Italian version of Spidey. The superhero also appeared in anime and other animated shows like Phineas and Ferb.
Ferb, are you expecting someone?
Not them.
But they're not that important to the overall Spider-Man picture, so we'll leave them as visual mentions while I'm talking. To be fair, 3 Giant Men probably should have stayed there too, but I just couldn't skip that cult masterpiece. Now, let's move on to Tom Holland.
Underoos!
The first appearance of this new version of the hero worked really well. They did not retell the origin story for the 100th time. The Spider Bite and Uncle Ben were left outside the frame. The new Parker is introduced quickly, basically for one big airport action scene, but the audience still has enough time to understand his personality and the general direction of his development. This new Spidey is a teenager who throws jokes around. To him, everything happening feels like a game for him.
Hey guys, you ever seen that really old movie? Empire Strikes Back?
Jesus, Tony, how old is this guy?
I don't know, I didn't carbon date him, he's on the young side.
In that sense, he really resembles Ultimate Spider-Man, except this version was loved by critics much more. The creators also brought one interesting detail into the new version straight from animation: the moving eyes on Spider-Man's mask. The static masks of Maguire and Garfield could not reflect what the characters were feeling. Now you can read emotions on his face without actually showing it. It is strange from a realism point of view, but absolutely right in terms of emotional connection.
That was awesome!
We also get the debut of a new Aunt May, played by Marissa Tomei.
So hard for me to believe that she's someone's aunt.
Yeah, well, they come in all shapes and sizes, you know.
With every new interpretation, she keeps getting younger. In the post-credits scene, Peter receives a gift from Tony Stark, the Spider Signal. a reference to the earliest comic book versions of Spider-Man, which hints that a continuation is coming soon. A solo Spider-Holland film will arrive next year. Which of the main Spider-Man trio did you like the most? Maguire, Garfield, or Holland? Definitely write your choice in the comments below.
Spider-Man! Don't flip! Yeah!
Tom Holland made everyone happy in Civil War, and fans were eagerly waiting for his next appearance. For the solo film, they brought in John Watts, the director of the pretty solid thriller Cop Car. Why him? Simple. In Cop Car, the main roles were played by teenagers, which showed that Watts knew how to direct stories about them, and the new film would be all about Peter's school life.
Peter, you still with us? Yeah.
The title Homecoming means two things at once: Spidey's return to Marvel and his return to high school age. But there's an important thing to understand here. The rights to Spider-Man still belong to Sony. In a way, they are renting the character to Disney, placing him inside their cinematic universe numbered 199999. And yes, that is the correct number for the MCU. We'll definitely talk about that in the future. Sony also receives a significant share, despite Disney characters appearing in the story and Disney's production power being involved. So it's not surprising that for a while the studios wanted to end their partnership. If that had happened, the Spider-Man No Way Home would never have happened. But they did not end their partnership, so I won't mention that conflict again.
What's up, guys? You got your PIN number? Whoa, you're the Avengers! What are you guys doing here?
The main villain is Michael Keaton as Adrian Toomes, also known as the Vulture. It's worth noting that Spider-Man movies' love for making villains more sympathetic is still very strong here. Remember, in Raimi's trilogy, more than half the villains redeem themselves. In Mark Webb's films, Peter's father's research was to blame for everything. Here, the situation is similar. Toomes not only recognizes his mistakes, but also learns Spider-Man's identity. And then he does not reveal it to Scorpion's cameo, played by the Honorable Voss from Far Cry 3 himself, Michael Mando.
If I knew who he was, he'd already be dead.
But one hero versus villain conflict is not enough here. So Toomes is also made the father of Liz, Peter's love interest.
Does she know?
Know what?
So she does it. Good.
The film is smoothly written and confidently occupies the niche of American Pie about superheroes. In a purely family-friendly movie, you do not often hear jokes like,
"The penis, Parker!"
Or maybe,
"What are you doing here?"
I'm looking at porn.
Of course, it's still far from the gold standard of raunchy teen comedies, but the vibes are definitely there. Despite the similarity of its overall formulas, the Marvel Cinematic Universe tries to offer different settings for its superhero stories. Spider-Man, just like in the 60s, is responsible for teenagers. In general, the constant rejuvenation of the character can be explained by the aging of the fan base.
Not again.
The original fans of Spider-Man stories have grown up and can easily enjoy stories about a 25 or 30-year-old young man. But the very essence of Spider-Man still has huge potential for teenage audiences. That's why Spidey often returns to the beginning of his journey, gathers a new audience, and draws their attention to comics that have been running for decades.
Hey, could you hold this for a second? Thanks. Hey, is this anybody's bike?
Besides Vulture, the movie also features two shockers, or rather one canonical shocker. Herman Schultz, played by Bokeem Woodbine, and the second one, Jackson Bryce, played by Logan Marshall Green, who in the comics had a slightly different identity as the criminal cowboy Montana. But as I said earlier, the spectacular Spider-Man animated series adjusted that villain's image. Vulture is also helped by the Tinkerer, a super smart villain from the comics. Among Peter's circle, Michelle Jones stands out, played by Zendaya. And as we learn at the end of the film, she calls herself MJ, which makes her yet another reincarnation of Mary Jane.
My friends call me MJ.
I thought you didn't have any friends.
I didn't.
The most interesting one is Ned Leeds, played by Jacob Batalon. The thing is, that was the name of the criminals who hid behind the identity of the Hobgoblin. Okay, well not exactly, it's a complicated story. It'll be interesting to see if that ever leads anywhere.
Crazy, that's crazy.
We also get a new Flash Thompson, played by Tony Revolori, and a new Betty Brant, played by Angourie Rice. But we've already talked about her. One of the main guest stars is Tony Stark, who becomes Spidey's mentor. Not exactly the most attentive or dedicated mentor, but he is what we get.
That's not a hug, I'm just grabbing the door for you. We're not. We're not there yet.
The movie made almost $1 billion. Holland's Spider-Man gets invited into the Avengers. His character plays a major role in Infinity War. With your permission, I will not stop on those films separately. Everyone already knows everything about them.
So you've done there's in trouble. What's your plan?
Ever see this really old movie, Aliens?
And if you haven't yet, you should definitely check out those videos about the history of the Alien and Predator universes on my channel, about how Alien was cursed and how Predator turned from a bloodthirsty monster into entertainment for kids. The full journey of these famous creatures is in my videos, so definitely check them out after the Spider-Man story.
What the?
After his colorful death in Infinity War and emotional return in Endgame, Spidey heads off to prepare for the sequel. And now, we're gonna make a small detour. Now that Marvel had a popular Spider-Man, so to speak, one with room to grow and enough potential to stay on screen for many years, it would seem natural to develop his universe specifically. But of course, nothing is ever that simple. Marvel Studios also had another company called Marvel Television, which at that time was not run by Kevin Feige, but instead by Ike Perlmutter. They were responsible for shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, Hellstrom, and other projects that were not exactly huge successes. All of them had one major feature in common. The Marvel Cinematic Universe did not really take them seriously. If the first 2 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. were strongly tied to the events of the MCU, later the show basically moved into different universes. The new animated series was released under Marvel Television, and that is why it lasted exactly 3 seasons and was cancelled when the more successful studio absorbed its television sibling. At first, the series feels most similar to The Spectacular Spider-Man from 2008, another retelling of familiar stories, gradually repeating all the main plot lines. But it does have one very important advantage. Just like the 1994 animated stories captured the essence of the main comic book arcs of its time, Spider-Man from 2017 brought many arcs and characters from the 2000s and 2010s to the screen for the first time. Anya Corazon debuts as Spider-Girl. Miles Morales also becomes a frequent guest.
Where's someplace we never go? A comedy club.
Peter studies at school for geniuses called Horizon High, run by Max Model, another very important character from the comics. The Spider Island storyline is adapted on screen for the first time, where all the people of Manhattan receive superpowers.
But recent data suggests that nearly 90% of Manhattan Island appears to have acquired spider powers.
And of course, we got one of the most controversial and widely discussed arcs of the 2010s, Superior Spider-Man, in which Dr. Octopus takes over Peter Parker's body.
Mind in this body? Dr. Octopus is now Spider-Man!
The 3rd season is entirely dedicated to the battle with Venom, consists of 6 40-minute episodes, and carries the subtitle Maximum Venom.
Earthlings are no match for the symbiote supreme.
It's also interesting that the animated series Avengers Assemble, Hulk and the Agents of Smash, and Guardians of the Galaxy suddenly shift from the Ultimate Universe into this new Spider-Man show. The later seasons move closer to the visual style of Spider-Man 2017, and the characters start visiting each other more often.
You're coming with us. Not on your life, Stark.
Nobody really remembers the Ultimate version here anymore. The animation is pleasant, sitting somewhere between Japanese-style visuals and the usual Western style. Let's call it dynamic stillness. As I said, the series lasted 3 seasons and was cancelled along with the shutdown of Marvel Television. Meanwhile, Sony's Spider-Man universe began expanding and launched a whole bunch of movies about Spider-Man characters without Spider-Man. Without Spider-Man? Definitely sounds like $1 million idea. The birth and spectacular collapse of that universe deserves its own separate video. So we'll leave Tom Hardy's Venom, Morbius, Kraven the Hunter, and of course the glorious, awful Madam Web for later. After all, we are talking about Spider-Man, and he is barely in those movies. So let's go to 2018 instead, to one of the best Spider-Man projects ever made. Sony has been trying for quite a while to make a fast, youthful animated film, something unusual. They wanted the movie to feel a little different. Basically, they wanted to surprise everyone. To develop the visual style, they brought in young visionary Alberto Mielgo. You may have seen his works in Love, Death and Robots. For example, the story where a woman runs away from her pursuer, or the story about conquistadors and the spirits of the lands they conquered. The most interesting thing is that those anthology episodes were hand-drawn, so you can imagine how much effort Mielgo is willing to put into his work. He spent several years developing the visual style and achieved a truly outstanding result. The problem was that Mielgo and the studio wanted very different things. He wanted to create a violent story, very unusual for Spider-Man, closer in tone to his other works. Sony wanted entertainment for the whole family.
Show him the zappy thing, Miles.
Can't do it on command.
Can't do it on command.
Mielgo was fired and his work was handed over to Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the creators of the hit Lego Movie. They became producers, while Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman took over as directors. Before that, they had worked on dozens of films as artists and writers, from Shrek to Minority Report. The animated film comes out and blows audiences away.
What's up, danger?
The story follows Miles Morales, a kid from New York who gets bitten by a radioactive spider. What are the odds? At the same time, the original Spider-Man is killed, but his copies arrive from different dimensions. A noir version is voiced by Nicolas Cage.
I don't understand it, but I will.
Penny Parker from the 4th Millennium piloting a robot that has a spider living inside it. Gwen Stacy, who lost Peter in her universe and gained superpowers herself.
I'm Gwenda.
And of course, Peter Porker, Spider-Ham. By the way, he even got his own short film, sort of a prequel to Into the Spider-Verse called Caught in a Ham.
A portal to another movie's timeline? I hope I haven't missed the first 62 minutes!
Together they have to face Kingpin, who wants to pull his dead wife and child from a parallel reality into his own world. The animated film once again brings up the multiverse, which had always sort of existed in Marvel projects, but rarely took center stage. Only this time a project about multiple realities becomes a hit, proving that audiences are interested in this kind of content, pure fan service. The movie is packed with references to different Marvel projects. In one scene, Brian Bendis, the creator of Miles Morales, is listed in a phone book. On a screen showing different universes, you can spot numbers of different worlds according to the official numbering system. Speaking of which, if we trust those numbers, the story takes place in the main Marvel universes. The main Earth 616 and Earth 1610, also known as the Ultimate Universe, the home of Morales. Except official sources give them different numbers, so these are not exactly those same universes. And there are plenty of other differences too. The circumstances of Parker's death in the Ultimate Universe were completely different. But enough with all this multiverse headache. Let's get into the main point.
Look behind you!
The animated film wins an Oscar, and a sequel goes into development. We've already spent time in Miles Morales' universe, so now it's time to visit others. The post-credits scene introduces Spider-Man 2099 and the 1967 Spider-Man. The movie is so stylistically precise that every scene feels like a small masterpiece. Just look at Prowler's entrance and the sounds that come with him, something between a siren and an animal scream.
Kill that guy.
By the way, behind that mask is Aaron Davis, Miles Morales' uncle, who had already appeared in Homecoming, played by Donald Glover. And Glover's Spider-Man costume in the show Community is what inspired Brian Bendis to create Miles Morales in the first place. That's a full circle moment right there. And Miles' love interest was Catherine Bishop, who would later debut in the Hawkeye series. So now we're just waiting for the new Spidey to show up in the MCU sooner or later. Let's move on, because in 2019, Tom Holland returns.
Yeah, I'm the new Spider-Man. Check it out. Whoa! That was part of the move.
The second solo Spider-Man film in the MCU became the finale of Phase 3, and in a way, an epilogue to Infinity War. We are shown how people are dealing with the blip, including all the strange and awkward situations it created, like classmates suddenly being much older. Peter is grieving the death of Iron Man and trying to find himself a new mentor. Quentin Beck, also known as Mysterio, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, seems perfect for that role. He supposedly arrives from a parallel universe to protect this Earth from the evil elementals. They were based on Hydra Man, Cyclone, and Molten Man. Naturally, his real goal is selfish. He wants to get his hands on the artificial intelligence Stark left to Peter. And he does it very easily because using Parker, who is constantly looking for a new role model, is not that hard.
Welcome to the Avengers.
The movie continues the teen comedy direction, shifting the focus toward Eurotrip.
Hello.
Just much more innocent. MJ figures out Peter's identity on her own. Their relationship has that very school-age awkwardness and sweetness. It is funny that the whole idea of the multiverse is treated here like nonsense. Just wait a couple of years, then you'll laugh. The most important thing happens in the finale, a rare plot twist that completely changes the character's status quo.
Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker. What the?
Mysterio reveals Spider-Man's identity to the entire world. Now everyone knows what Peter does when he's not at school. And we learn all of this from J. Jonah Jameson himself, once again played by J.K. Simmons.
That Spider-Man was responsible for the brutal murder of Mysterio.
The second post-credit scene hints at an event called Secret Invasion, connected to the Skrulls, a race capable of changing their appearance. Among the nice references, you can point out the license plates which hint at specific comic book issues that inspired the film. For example, in London you can see the plate TASM 143, a reference to Amazing Spider-Man 143, where Cyclone first appeared and where Peter and Mary Jane had their first kiss. The license plate on Talos' car, while he is pretending to be Nick Fury, HNM 62011, points to issue 6 of Hawkeye and Mockingbird released in 2011, where a Skrull Nick Fury appeared.
You got my shoes!
The movie gives you exactly what you expect from it, a light teenage adventure with plenty of humor, beautiful locations, and solid action scenes. The Blu-ray bonus materials included a short film called Peter's To-Do List, made up of scenes cut from the final version. The box office was strong. The third film went into development, but it's still too early to get into that. Sony would keep striking while the iron was hot.
You ready?
Yeah.
You're gonna love this.
In 2021, 2 animated projects featuring Peter Parker were released. First, there was Spidey and His Amazing Friends, made for preschool audiences. In it, Peter Parker, Miles Morales, and Gwen Stacy live in the same universe and fight crime together. Nothing too special if you are older than 7. The second project was What If, based on the popular comic book series about unusual versions of familiar stories. But Spidey only really stood out in the Marvel Zombies episode, and he was voiced by a different actor, since Holland was pretty busy at the time.
Hey, relax. I'm just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
So, we'll not spend any more time on these projects, just like we will not spend time on the second Venom, and instead move on to the long-awaited Spider-Man crossover. Spider-Man No Way Home is important not only for the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Spider-Man stories, but also for the post-COVID movie theater system. After all, this was the first film of the new era to make almost $2 billion at the box office, and literally drag people back into theaters. The reason was not so much the overall quality of the movie, but rather the tricks the creators used. Of course, I'm talking about the gradual leaking of information about the return of the other Spider-Men.
These are my new friends. This is Peter Parker, Spider-Man, they're me's from other universes. They're here to help.
No Way Home is an example of a brilliant marketing campaign, something the previous Phase 4 movies could not really brag about. First, the trailers and official posters introduced the villains one by one, and interest starts growing. Then, unofficially, let's call it that, a couple of shots with the Spider-Man leak, and people start arguing whether the material is fake or not. Andrew Garfield gives one of the best performances of his career by saying everywhere that he has absolutely nothing to do with this movie.
It's Andrew Garfield playing Spider-Man again. Yeah. Oh, you almost got me. No, I'm not.
People needed to get to the theater first to learn the truth. The feeling of being among the first witnesses to the appearance of multiple Parkers created amazing word of mouth, which pulled even more people in. Pretty masterful work from the marketing team.
Dude!
The story continues the previous film about Peter Parker, played by Tom Holland. Mysterio told the whole world Spider-Man's identity, which splits society into fans and opponents of our hero. This is the first great explanation for one of Spider-Man's basic concepts. Why does Jameson hate him?
When will people wake up and realize that everywhere Spider-Man goes, chaos and calamity ensue?
Why are people so critical of him in a world full of superheroes? This is the answer.
Helped him murder
No, I didn't.
Come on,
anybody.
He hit me. Spider-Man hit me. He hit me.
A specific event that divided society. Of course, we understand that every person, action, and event can cause polarized opinions. Pretty much everything does these days. But for the very conditional Marvel world, it is nice to see a concrete starting point. Thankfully, the movie is not about legal battles and running from the law, and we finally get the first long-awaited cameo of Matt Murdock.
How did you just do that? I'm a really good lawyer.
And here, another Netflix hero returns in his perfect form. Now they just need to bring Jon Bernthal back as the Punisher. Or maybe I should make a video about the Punisher. You guys sure know how to motivate me. Hit like and leave a comment and let me know. Peter and his friends do not get into college, so he decides to visit a wizard he knows and ask him to erase everyone's memory.
That you didn't even think to plead your case with him first before you asked me to brainwash the entire world?
Well, I mean, when you put it like that, then...
Yeah, no half measures here. The spell fails because Peter cannot stop talking, and it starts pulling into his world everyone who knows his identity. This is where the real essence of the movie begins. A parade of fan service. Even the timing of each major character's appearance feels calculated for cheers and applause in the theater.
Hello, Peter.
The movie can roughly be divided into two halves, the arrival of the villain and the arrival of the heroes, with May's death working as the intermission. And this is where the viewing experience starts to split. The first half is much weaker than the second, partly because it tries to justify what is happening on screen. It tries to make the setup work and explain the characters' actions, and it fails almost everywhere. At the heart of all the conflict is the classic Marvel approach, which has been used as a foundation since Civil War. Characters talk a lot, but they do not listen to each other. Doctor Strange is sure they need to send everyone home, and he's right. Peter thinks they need to cure everyone. He's also right. If you have the chance to help, refusing to do so would be immoral. The problem is that Peter is sure all of them will die as soon as they return. And according to Electro, he was already being pulled into the power grid, which means his chances of surviving inside the grid in human form are extremely questionable. But Peter and Strange do not talk it through. They start fighting, grabbing the precious cube from each other, and showing abilities no one knew about before.
How are you doing that?
I have no idea.
Seriously, how? But it does look cool. Same with the following surreal chase. At the end of it, Peter traps Strange in some weird place. Couldn't you, just kill him? Did that thought ever cross your mind? No, it's more important to trust the villains.
Where's Connors? He told me he wants to stay in the truck. Okay.
So, the giant lizard who wanted to turn an entire city into reptiles stays in the van because he wants it? A character who has not said a single line suggesting that he wants to get rid of his mutation is just left uncontrolled on the street because he wants it? What does wants it even mean?
I mean, maybe it's not such a big deal.
Naturally, all of this leads to tragedy and unleashes the villain's main trump card, Willem Dafoe.
Norman? Norman's on sabbatical, honey.
Oh my god, he is so good. Every villainous line, every facial expression, every little callback.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
This is the real hero of the whole event. With just one line, he makes every villain start to doubt everything.
Gods don't have to choose. We take.
What is Sandman's motivation? How did a different type of energy turn Max back into regular Jamie Foxx? And if only those who know the truth about Peter Parker were pulled into this world, then Octavius learned his identity 1 minute before his death. So they're sending him back right in front of his collapsing machine? And he will die anyway. There are too many buts in the setup of this story. And then Aunt May dies, explaining why Uncle Ben was absent from this world, because she's basically Aunt Ben or Uncle May, whichever you prefer. And finally, the iconic line is spoken.
And with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
So, all three films were not really about Spider-Man's adventures. They were about him becoming Spider-Man. No Way Home plays a crucial role in the character's development. In the MCU, Peter has always relied on some guest star. He always had a mentor. And in this film, the hero is finally brought to the line where the real Spider-Man begins. But before that incredibly beautiful point, the movie needs to handle the climax and bring Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire into the story. And with them, a whole tanker of fan service. Remember Tobey's bad back, which once put Raimi's sequel at risk? Andrew helps him with it.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Right?
That's better.
Yeah.
Remember the subtitle of Mark Webb's Garfield movies? The writers make sure to point that out too.
Yeah, I can take it. No, I can take it.
You are amazing.
I can take it.
You are amazing.
Thank you, yeah.
And of course, we cannot do without awkward jokes about organic webbing.
Like, does it just come out of your wrists, or does it come out of anywhere else?
Only the wrists.
The conversations between these Spider-Men do not always carry much meaning and are written in a pretty basic way, but they work wonderfully on a subconscious level. Every joke, every awkward confession of love, Tobey getting injured, and of course Garfield's Peter saving MJ. All of it feels incredibly emotional.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Are you okay?
In the end, saying goodbye to them almost outweighs saying goodbye to the main characters of Tom Holland's trilogy. But it also leads to a beautiful reboot without changing the actor, something Spider-Man Adventures should have learned how to do a long time ago. Peter is alone, renting an apartment and unable to pay for it.
Rent?
Hi.
Hi. What's hi? Can I spend it?
Now that would have been the dream cameo. He sews himself a classic suit without nanomachines and swings through the city past the Christmas tree that Hawkeye will destroy in his own series. In the comics, Peter's achievements were reset in a similar way with the help of the demon Mephisto, who erased the truth about him from humanity's memory. No Way Home contains an indescribably stupid setup, characters who do not listen to each other, and whose overconfidence and inability to find compromise lead to people's deaths. And yet, paradoxically, it also has incredible heart and fan service. Every nostalgic charge hits the target, because No Way Home is not so much a movie as it is a fan attraction. Its goal is strong emotion, which then has to be squeezed into a script of whatever quality. It does not matter how Venom got there when he does not even know who Spider-Man is, let alone Peter Parker. What matters is showing Rhino in his familiar costume in the clouds, and reminding us about the Lego Death Star 3 times.
Come on, kid!
Are these your Legos?
3 times! By the way, creators explain Venom by saying that symbiotes can sense the multiverse, which is why Eddie Brock was pulled here. Not the best explanation, but not the worst either. I would name Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Willem Dafoe as the movie's biggest strengths, and all of them can be combined into one main strength: nostalgia. No Way Home works so well because of the emotions most viewers received when they were teenagers, and a little after that too. The movie also showed Marvel Studios which direction they needed to move in. They had tried to find gold in Phase 3, but they needed to go even further into the past, into films from other studios that had already become part of the MCU. Now any past actor can be brought back through the multiverse theory. All the money is not in drama, comedy, action, or a deeply moving story. All the gold in the world is hidden in nostalgia and fan service. And the box office of future films will prove it. But we're not talking about the MCU. We're talking about Spider-Man, which means it is time to move on to the next long-awaited project. 5 years after the hit original, in 2023, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse comes out. If the first film was about characters from other universes visiting Miles Morales' world, then the sequel quite logically sends the main hero on a journey through the Spider-Verse itself. Development on the sequel began right after the incredibly warm reception of the first film, but production ended up taking a full 5 years. Phil Lord and Chris Miller stayed on the project as producers, but the entire directing team changed. Across the Spider-Verse decided not to be just a regular sequel, but to offer something truly unusual, visually and narratively, and to make fans squeal with delight over dozens of fan service references. Seriously, no Spider-Man movie had ever had this much fan service before. In the story, Miles Morales continues fighting crime in New York and runs into the Spot, scientist Jonathan Owen, who gained superpowers after the Collider explosion from the previous film. In the comics, the Spot first appeared back in the 80s, but before this, he had never really been featured in a major project. An interesting choice for the main catalyst of the story.
I am your nemesis. You are not.
Miles begins traveling between worlds and meets Miguel O'Hara, who has assembled a team of spider people from every corner of the Spider-Verse. Every unbelievably beautiful frame of the animated film, every cool stylistic choice, and every visual experiment feels like just a warm-up before the trip through the Spider Society headquarters. Spider people from every possible screen project appear in the frame, and the beloved spectacular Spider-Man who never got his continuation finally gets a line. And for that, they brought back the original voice actor Josh Keaton.
But it's the truth, Miles.
The video game Spider-Man from Insomniac is here too, voiced once again by Yuri Lowenthal. Yes, the references go beyond the usual animated format, and the spot even visits the universe of Tom Hardy's Venom. We do not get a cameo from the main actor, but Mrs. Chen is more than enough.
You're acting like weird stuff like this happens to you all the time. Can I have some gum?
Among the anomalies, you can see Donald Glover as Miles' uncle. Remember, he briefly appeared in Homecoming. There are two possible explanations here. Either he finally became the Prowler in some parallel universe, or there's still hope to see him in that role in the MCU.
Truth to stand.
And here's another funny detail. Someday I will definitely make a video about the ultimate history of the MCU, and we'll have to touch on this question. What is going on with the numbering of the universes? Disney's Marvel rather arrogantly assigns itself the number 616, which had previously belonged to the original comic book universe. The correct number for the MCU should be 199999, but the movies and series keep insisting on 616. I stick to the original numbering, and I am absolutely confident in my version. I'll explain the details in future videos, but right now it's Spider-Man time. So, Across the Spider-Verse agrees with me and connects the events of No Way Home to the Collider explosion.
Don't even get me started on Doctor Strange, you little nerd back on Earth 1999.
This number is the correct one. What do you think? How should these universes be numbered? Definitely write your thoughts in the comments below. Across the Spider-Verse runs for an incredibly packed 2 hours and 20 minutes and gives viewers a true feast of colors and visual styles. Only two worlds that are fundamentally different from the familiar New York are shown in full. The world of the Indian Spider-Man, who debuted in comics in 2004, and that same future Earth, the home of Spider-Man 2099. Miguel O'Hara, voiced by Oscar Isaac. There was a reason this character was shown in the post-credits scene of the first film. Now he takes on the role of almost the main villain of the movie, trying to stop Miles from saving his father, because doing so could destroy an entire world. Although these universes are not exactly the same universes as in the comics, they differ from canon in many ways. Turning Earth 928, where Miguel was born, into Earth 928B. Canon is a tricky thing. Sometimes it's easier to introduce a new universe than to follow all the rules of the original. Across the Spider-Verse ends at the most interesting possible moment. Miles finds himself on Earth 42 because that is where the spider that bit him came from. His father is dead there, and Uncle Aaron has passed the role of the Prowler to an evil version of the main hero.
Who are you? I'm Miles Morales.
Gwen gathers a team to save Miles, and we will have to wait years for the continuation. The third film, Beyond the Spider-Verse, was supposed to come out in 2024, but ended up in production hell caused by the creator's own ambitions. Make the finale of the trilogy even cooler than the sequel. Not exactly an easy task. The writer's strike also added fuel to the fire and delayed the start of production. Still, the third film is now planned for 2027. For a spectacle like that, we can wait. So, the two most anticipated Spider-Man projects, The New Adventures of Tom Holland's rebooted MCU version, and Beyond the Spider-Verse, have both taken a very long road to release, leaving Spidey fans hungry. But Marvel Animation, together with Disney Plus, prepared a small snack. In 2025, the animated series Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man came out. In 2021, Disney announced Spider-Man Freshman Year, which was supposed to tell the story of the beginning of Tom Holland's Spidey journey and exist in official MCU canon. A canon animated series set in the main universe was met with interest, but there was one problem. It is almost impossible to make a canon prequel series about Spider-Man truly interesting. The creator's hands were tied. You can't introduce major villains because they might be needed later for the feature films. Sure, you can build a story that doesn't contradict the main timeline, but making that story exciting would be a real challenge. So the series moved into a parallel reality, changed its title to Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and completely freed the writers from any restrictions. Peter Parker is once again a high school student and gains his powers after witnessing a fight between Doctor Strange and an alien symbiote. After that, everything is more or less familiar. He becomes a hero, hides his powers from Aunt May, who looks and acts a lot like Marissa Tomei's version, until Norman Osborn finds him.
My name is Norman Osborn.
The creators described this series as an expanded episode of What If? What if Norman Osborn had found Peter instead of Tony Stark? In a way, the series still exists inside MCU canon. The attack on New York from the first Avengers is mentioned along with the Sokovia Accords and even the airport fight where Spider-Man was originally supposed to debut in his familiar suit. But in this universe, Peter starts working for Osborn, who's presented as a fairly decent guy. At first. We're not really expecting him to stay that way until the end, are we? Another MCU connection is Clev, a street vendor who appears from time to time in the episodes. He is once again voiced by actor Zach Cherry, who played him in the movies. Daredevil is also here, voiced by Charlie Cox. And that is where the MCU connections pretty much end.
Don't mind me. I was just leaving.
Clearly understanding which characters are likely to be used in the fourth Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland. The animated series brings in Tarantula. The male version of this villain first appeared back in the 70s, while the newer version, Maria Vasquez, who appears in the animation, debuted in the 2000s. Scorpion and Tombstone are also here, and that's basically where the similarities end. The creators changed Peter's usual circle quite a lot. Now he is friends with the sorceress Nico Minoru from The Runaways, and he has a crush on Pearl Penguin, a fairly recent aquatic superhero known as Wave, although here she does not have superpowers. But the strangest thing is that Peter is friends with a young Tombstone, the stone-faced mobster from the comics. Here he is a promising athlete who gets mixed up with the wrong crowd. As a result, half the runtime feels like a Spider-Man adventure, and the other half feels like a loose remake of Boys in the Hood, about harsh life in the ghetto destroying promising young people. Other than that, it's a normal Spider-Man show, with a strong focus on social issues and a higher level of inclusivity. By the end of the season, Peter gets his classic suit. Norman Osborn uses his blood to create a radioactive spider, which travels back in time with the help of Doctor Strange and bites Peter, a pure Ouroboros. The animation tries to look like old comics and the 60s animated series at the same time. Some frames could be printed as comic book panels, but in motion, the result is debatable. The main complaint is the whole what-if format, which is not explored very strongly here. Despite Osborn's mentorship and his attempts to make Spider-Man more aggressive, Peter still remains himself.
With great power comes great respect.
There are no major changes in his personality or in global events, although the watcher does keep a close eye on what is happening in one scene. Overall, it's a fairly curious variation on Spider-Man with a strong dose of teen drama. The series has been renewed for a second season, which means we will soon see what happens with the symbiote that falls into Norman's hands, and with Dr. Octopus scheming in prison. We also learn that Peter's father is alive and behind bars too, and he's voiced by Josh Keaton, the same spectacular Spider-Man. So, I'll watch what's happening next. What about you? Now's the time to move on to the most unusual Spider-Man appearance of all. I never could have imagined that the next live-action Spider-Man after Tom Holland would be Nicolas Cage.
I'm a Spider-Man. I Spider.
In 2008, Marvel introduced its noir universe. Sometimes writers get tired of continuing the main storyline and decide to imagine what would happen if things were different. Neil Gaiman's 1602 line moves Marvel heroes to the 17th century, and Spidey becomes Peter Parquoth, a pilgrim who moved to North America. Or you can release a zombie virus and watch beloved characters eat each other. But the noir line turned out to be the most natural fit for this approach. After all, dark stories about 1930s New York and superhero fiction have a lot in common. Tough heroes, theatrical villains, charming dames, investigations, action, betrayal. Just add superpowers to the characters. Take Perry Mason, make him a blind fighter with echolocation, and voila, you have Daredevil. Peter Parker from the noir universe fought for the rights of the poor and the powerless during the Great Depression, together with Aunt May, and his Uncle Ben was eaten by an insane criminal known as the Vulture. Yes, things are a little harsher here than in the main universe. After Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse introduced noir Peter Parker, voiced by Nicolas Cage, producers Phil Lord and Chris Miller were amazed by how much the actor loved comic books. The character sparked curiosity among readers who had never known the noir universe before, and development began on a solo animated film about the Dark Spidey. But then the producers had a thought. Why use only Cage's voice if they could invite him to actually play the character? A movie was out of the question because big studios would not allow too much creative improvisation, but a series was perfect. Nicolas Cage even agreed to star in a multi-episode project for the first time in his career. That is how Spider-Noir appeared, one of the most interesting Spider-Man projects in a very long time. But to avoid following the canon of the comic book universe, the events were moved into yet another alternative reality. Cage does not play Peter Parker, the one who enters Miles Morales' world in the animated film, but Ben Reilly, a detective superhero who gave up heroics after the death of the woman he loved. Remember, that was also the name of Peter's clone who became the Scarlet Spider. Although there is a strong chance that Cage's hero here is still Peter, but changed his name to escape the authorities after gaining his powers. In the original comic, everything happened because of a mystical artifact tied to the Spider God. In the series, Germany experimented on American prisoners of war during World War I, and one of them bit the main character. Everyone who managed to escape from there gained supernatural powers. The main focus will be on the 3 supervillains, besides Spider-Man himself: Sandman, Flint Marko, the Electrical Megawatt, Dirk Layden, not to be confused with Electro, they are different characters, and Lonnie Lincoln, also known as Tombstone. Lately, this villain has been appearing on screen very often, and he will even make it into the 4th feature film with Tom Holland. Let us see if he also turns out to be a good guy trapped in difficult circumstances there. Spider-Man reminds us that besides a whole bunch of animal-themed villains, scorpions, rhinos, and so on, the hero always has real gangsters in reserve. The main evil of the series is Silvermane, played by Brendan Gleeson, while the role of the femme fatale goes to Black Cat, here called Cat Hardy. All the noir conventions are right there: conspiracies, political struggle, unstoppable evil, and a fragile hero standing in its way. Only now he has superpowers that he does not really want to use.
Because with no power, there's no responsibility.
Cage fits perfectly into the image of a noir detective, largely copying the style of Humphrey Bogart. He is basically Sam Spade or Philip Marlowe, whichever you prefer, but with organic webbing shooting from his wrists.
It's, Tai Chi.
In the end, this surprising mix of classic noir storytelling and superhero fiction pleased almost everyone, both viewers and critics. And it came in 2 color options: black and white for fans of the canonical look, and a more familiar color version for modern viewers. I definitely recommend the classic version because in that form the series feels genuinely magical. One more direction has now been added to the main ways Spider-Man develops on screen. Noir set in the alternate universe with Nicolas Cage in the lead role. I still cannot believe this actually happened, but I'm thrilled. And now we are on the final stretch. Spider-Man Brand New Day comes out, the long-awaited soft reboot of Tom Holland's Spidey. He has finally become that superhero, matured and no longer needs mentors like before, except of course Hulk and the Punisher. Yes, it is harder for this Peter to be independent than for other versions of him. There are a lot of villains in play, and Scorpion Mac Gargan, played by Michael Mando, will finally get a full role. And they will also introduce the X-Men. If Sadie Sink is not playing Jean Grey, then what is the point of any of this? Today, Spider-Man on screen is moving in 4 directions. The MCU with Tom Holland, which could easily have enough fuel for one more trilogy. The animated multiverse, which can be developed endlessly. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and its own version of the character's evolution. And finally, Spider-Noir, which I personally could watch forever, because the result is honestly mesmerizing. Spider-Man is one of the most popular superheroes of all time, and the modern branching development of projects about him only confirms that. And honestly, for the first time in many years, I can say that every single one of them interests me. What about you? Let me know in the comments below what your favorite versions of Spidey are. And of course, click the video on screen and move on to the next one. Thanks for watching. This is 11 Slate.